Coming up on Regarding Men, Andrew O'Keefe, Postmortem on a Wife Beater.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Regarding Men, where we hold men in high regard and where red pill isolation comes to die. I'm Janice Fiamengo. I'm the author of the Fiamengo File, and I'm joined today, as always, by Paul Elam of paulelam.com and by Tom Golden of Men Are Good.
Men Are Good.
And today we're discussing a news item out of Australia from last week. We learned that the founder of White Ribbon Australia, which is an organization that believes there is only one kind of domestic violence, and that is male violence against women. Essentially, no other kind counts for that organization. And the founder and past chairman of that organization, Andrew O'Keefe, who's a well-known TV personality in Australia, the host for many years of a news program called Weekend Sunrise and various other shows as well. He has been charged with domestic violence. And we're going to get into talking about this in a minute, but this is significant, not least because he has really built his very successful career not only as a male feminist, but as a smarmy, preening, self-promoting one who took great pleasure in attacking anyone who dared challenge the feminist narrative of the male perpetrator and the innocent female victim. He's been a consistent critic of our own Paul Elam, whose birthday it happens to be. Happy birthday, Paul. And of course, there's no connection between it being Paul's birthday and the fact that Andrew O'Keefe has been charged with domestic violence. But
yes, it is. The present.
Yeah, it's this is a man who has really been one of the most aggressive misandrists out there on the public airways. And just to give you a flavor of the kind of aggressive misandry and mocking and deriding of men's issues advocates, including our own Cassie Jaye as well, we're going to play you a few clips so that you can get a sense of his self-presentation and his public position on these issues.
Oh boy, hold on to
Roll
your
it.
Yeah.
Let's bring in White Ribbon Chairman, our very own Andrew O'Keefe, and psychologist Colette Smart is here too. Good morning to both of you.
Sammy.
Now, Andrew, this White Ribbon campaign says it takes real men to speak up about violence against women. What should we do if we see violence?
Well, Sammy, I think most blokes like to think that inside them somewhere is a little bit of a superhero, that, you know, if needs be, we could rush into the burning building to save our kids, you know, that kind of thing. So I think what is required in this instance is a bit of courage on the part of us men. You know, when we see or suspect that violence is happening around us, we have to be brave enough to intervene. Now, I should say that we should be brave.
Okay.
Ask you this. If you wanted to make a film about the issues facing the modern man, why did you have to focus on the views of these extreme misogynists of the men's right movement, people like Paul Elam? Why do you highlight men's issues by promoting men who minimise women's issues? It seems to me that you don't really question their views in the film.
Did you see the film?
Well, we saw as much as we could because your publicist wouldn't send us the full thing.
I sent you the screener link actually to the full film.
But so we watched as much as we could, yeah. But
you could also buy the film on Google Play,
No, we
Vimeo,
couldn't.
and
We
Amazon
tried to
Prime.
do that and we
be
couldn't.
that as it may, you know, it just seems from what I have seen of the film, there's not a lot of questioning of some of their views. That's all.
Yes, there is. Absolutely. If you've seen the film, you would see the questions that I asked and their answers.
We've done a lot of reading around Paul Elam over the years. In fact, we've interviewed Paul Elam, and there's no denying that a lot of what he says is deeply misogynist.
these
totally
things.
agree that they are all conversations worth having. Why not have them with regular men, not guys who are
did.
in charge of the most misogynistic, anti-woman, anti-feminist organisations
I
in the world?
interviewed Dr. Warren Farrell, who is very even-minded. I also interviewed Mark Angelucci, an attorney who works on behalf of men's issues. I interviewed Fred Hayward, who is a
Percent
You
of
will
all
find
rape
that this
cases
is a
actually end up in a
significant-
conviction anyway. So, I mean, yes, the problems you are addressing are real and there are injustices, but when only 3% of rape cases end up in a conviction anyway, you could hardly say that the system is flooded with vexatious complaints.
It's not a matter of saying that the system is flooded with vexatious complaints, but please tell the men that have spent 10, 15, 20 years in prison falsely. Tell the young men whose academic careers have been ended by false allegations that this is a small problem. We're not saying that the numbers are huge, but we are saying that a rape allegation alone is enough to destroy a man's life. And it has happened many, many times over. So for the individuals affected by this, we try to pay attention to this problem.
Yeah, for sure.
We
for
are
sure.
not being hysterical in the way we are being evidence-based in how we approach this, not political.
Yep.
Oh,
So
boy.
there he is. I'd love to know where he gets that statistic that only 3% of rape cases are ever successfully prosecuted. But anyway, I mean that's how he is. He is the purveyor of feminist facts. He is not at all interested in the reality on the ground of domestic violence or indeed rape claims. He's the ultimate in condescending, criticizing Cassie Jaye for failing to question men's rights activists in a film he hadn't even bothered to see to make sure that he was on firm ground in making that criticism, and so on and so on. Actually, on air, demanding that real men both investigate cases of domestic violence, whatever that would mean, and intervene when they see it. He does go on to say, only make sure that you're safe before you do so. How could you make sure you were safe before you did so? But you're not a real man unless you jump in to save the woman if you see some sort of altercation taking place. I mean, come on. Yeah, this is, so anyway, here he is. He has been charged with 1 count of common assault, which means that it was an alleged assault that has not caused bodily harm. The alleged assault took place last Saturday night, Sunday morning, January 30th to 31st. He was charged early in the morning of January 31st by the police, charged with assaulting it's not clear whether she's his common law partner, or there's rumors that he might have secretly married her. But anyway, he was living with this woman. She's a doctor, and her name is Dr. Arlie Lavie, I think. It's an unusual name, but so I may be mispronouncing it. But anyway, so that's what happened. And as often happens with accused men, he's been promptly disavowed by pretty well everybody. The White Ribbon Australia has come out to make a statement, hastening to say he hasn't had anything to do with White Ribbon Australia for some years, but then going on to condemn him implicitly anyway, talking about how White Ribbon stands against all male violence against women, and pledges that men who use violence must be brought to justice, and even going on to say that all men should take this occasion as an opportunity for self-examination of their own attitudes and the relationships with the women in their lives, etc. So he is experiencing the loneliness of the accused man.
Yes. And for that, I feel sorry for him in some ways, almost. I'm not sure I'm quite there yet, because this is ambivalence, It's like, ha ha, finally, you got yours. On the other hand, he's kind of one of us in a way now, because the guy's been fired from his job. What's that?
I don't feel sorry for him at all. As a matter of fact, I think Janice was in error using the term alleged. He's not alleged. He's guilty as fucking sin. He beat his wife. And I only regret that there wasn't some superhero, a real man, to
Break
intervene in that and protect that woman from his viciousness, which was, of course, inspired by his patriarchal power and his absolute tendency to dominate and control the weaker sex. We don't need to point out anything about alleged. This guy is guilty as sin. He needs to fry. That's all there is to it. I don't even know why we're discussing it.
Did you know that he has denied that he was the perpetrator?
Yes,
He's
yes,
claiming
very
she was the
interesting.
perpetrator.
Sure.
Yeah,
Sure, he
Yeah.
didn't do it. Yeah, he didn't
And
do it.
He's going to find out real quick that his denial doesn't make any difference, Andrew. Sorry, bud.
No, but
Yeah.
women do not lie about these things.
That's exactly
They
right, Paul.
don't. If a woman
Yeah.
says, you need to believe her.
Yep.
And he's been saying
Yeah.
this for years and years and years, and
Yeah.
trying to demonize anybody that challenges that idea. So how he can turn
Yeah.
around and hypocritically say he didn't do it.
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah, I mean, that
Not
is
mine.
really interesting. Like, yeah,
It is.
2 weeks ago, he would have scoffed at that idea that a woman could be the aggressor, or indeed, as I suspect, but of course I don't know, as I suspect is probably the case in this instance, that a woman can be an equal participant in an emotional fueled, perhaps alcohol fueled row late at night, and with shouting and some shoving and etc. He would have scoffed at that. That would be out of the realm of possibility.
Well-
and now that's exactly what he's alleging in his case, that he was not the aggressor in this assault.
And we saw him scoff at the idea of false accusations in the clips.
Yeah.
It's like, how many are, that doesn't make any sense. It's like,
well, yeah, he pulled a statistic about rape accusations directly from his ass,
Yeah.
and threw it out there in a conversation with no backup whatsoever.
And by the way, Paul, that was a really nice response to him. I mean, that was a really nice response. That brought tears to my eyes because that said exactly what needed to be said. So thank you for that.
Yeah, me too. Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. I want to. We'll put the clip of the entire interview between that Weekend Sunrise team and Paul Elam in the low bar,
Yes.
because it's a masterful interview, Paul.
Yes.
It really is. Like
It really is.
they
This-
keep asking these deliberately sort of wrong footing kinds of
Loaded.
questions.
Yep.
Yeah, and with multiple parts, all involving false assumptions and illogical conclusions, and it's so difficult when you're in that position to know even which part of it to try to answer. I always take the wrong part and end up in a kind of futile exchange of did not, did to, something like that, or that's not true. And,
Oh, God, it's so true,
but
Janice.
You
Me
gave
too.
really good answers, Paul,
Oh.
to two interviewers who were determined from the very first moment to wrong foot you and to put you on the defensive, and and simply to derail the entire discussion, and you
Yes.
didn't allow it to be derailed. And I know that's really difficult to do. So
And
so good for you.
if you listen closely to the end of the interview, the woman who was interviewing came around. She started to see what you were saying. She goes, "Oh," like that, which must have pissed him off even more,
Well, I had to
Yeah.
step up my game in that interview because, after all, I was in the presence of greatness
Yeah.
with Andrew O'Keefe, and I'm just heartbroken that he turned out to be just another wife beater.
Yeah, there you go.
Mhm. Yeah.
And he is. What can you say? And
Yeah,
I wrote a poem.
actually that
I wrote a poem in honor of Andrew and his situation. Would you like me to read it to you?
Oh, yes.
All right, here we go. A blue pill man named O'Keefe with his wife had a serious beef. O'Keefe said he didn't, but she said he did, and that was the end of O'Keefe.
yeah, that's
I love it for the
yeah.
times. I love it.
O'Keefe deserves the limerick, right?
He sure does. Yeah. Yeah. So when, yeah, of course, we don't know, what actually happened on that night. Certainly, the woman in question has been seen walking around town. She has not been injured. So this sounds like a fairly low-level kind of row, and yet he is, as far as I understand, I looked up what common assault means in the Australian Criminal Code, and it can be punished by up to 2 years in prison. So it's obviously he's facing something very serious indeed.
Wow.
He's been fired, of course, from
Right,
Channel 7.
right.
Now they claim not as a result of this incident.
Of
They
course
said
not.
that they
What?
yeah, they had
They
they
really
claim they
say that?
severed their they claim they severed their relationship with him prior to this incident.
Bullshit.
But you can bet that he probably would have been let go anyway. He seems to have had a history
I think they're
of
lying.
Yeah, of course they're
yeah,
lying.
Lying.
could
Can't
could
admit
well
it,
be, yeah.
You know what we do know for sure, though, about his history, and I think that this needs to be pointed out, the White Ribbon Foundation, which is now no more. It is defunct. And there were investigations done, and we wrote them up on A Voice for Men. I'll get the link and we'll provide it below, going through White Ribbon's financials. And as it turns out, what they did was go around to schools and other places and did a lot of campaigning to raise money. And they did, in fact, raise millions and millions of dollars in the name of domestic violence and fighting domestic violence, or excuse me, fighting against men who commit domestic violence.
yes. Mm-hmm.
But they did even a single dollar of that money ever find its way to a victim of domestic violence? No. What did they do with the money? They paid themselves lavish salaries and traveled the world and stayed at 5-star locations for conferences that they had amongst themselves. All it was a money-raising racket, and it eventually went belly up due to mismanagement. That's the kind of people that Andrew O'Keefe is connected to in the world. You might as well call them mafia, because these guys are thugs that raise money on lies and spend it on themselves. That's all they ever did. Wow. O'Keefe is not going to suffer any long-term, well, he'll suffer some long-term consequences. He's worth like $40+ million. He's not going to suffer financially, but where he'll suffer is, I could hear 10,000 dinner and cocktail invitations being withdrawn right now because he is going to face the stigma of being a wife beater. Right. And it doesn't matter whether or not he did it. It makes no difference whatsoever. He either was totally innocent and trying to defend himself from a crazy, drunk, violent woman, or he's just a trashy wife beater and beat the crap out of his wife. And now, either way, it doesn't matter, because his social circles are going to regard him as the former and not the latter.
Yep.
It's going to happen.
Yes, and you have to say it's. Oh, sorry, Tom.
No,
go ahead.
You go ahead.
I'm just going to say that in that sense, it is deserved. I mean, there's no doubt that we all believe in the presumption of innocence, even for somebody like Andrew O'Keefe. I hope he gets a fair trial. That goes without saying, I hope. But I can't help but remember how on the program, the first clip that we showed from in that program, he talks about what men must do, to live up to white ribbon masculinity in all of its purity and chivalric glory. And you would never know from his recital of all the things men should do if they're having an argument with their wives. There's never a hint that the woman herself might be involved in violence. It's always do you raise your voice? Stop raising your voice, men. And I mean, the things that count as domestic violence in his recital are things like raising your voice, punching the wall, the things that aren't violent at all. But of course, violence has been expanded in the white ribbon narrative to encompass emotional violence, psychological violence, power and control, all those kinds of things. So it is certainly poetic justice that he is now going to try to claim what may indeed be true, that this was an encounter where both people were shouting and somewhat out of control. But he is the one who is going to be charged and whose reputation is going to be destroyed.
Yep. And he's going to get a real taste that the accusation itself is enough to tear you apart, which is exactly what Paul said to him.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Exactly.
the accusation
Yeah.
that tears people apart without whether it's true or not. It doesn't make any difference. You know? Ugh.
Yeah. And,
of course, I bet he comes out of this saying that he's probably a infinitesimally small fraction of these circumstances. He's going to try to reclaim his reputation by telling people that he's very much the exception and not the rule.
Of course.
yeah.
And it won't do him any good, because
Probably not.
once you're tainted in cancel culture, you're done.
Right.
Yeah. He may, I mean, I'm being very cynical now, but I could see him, if it looks as if things are going against him, saying that he has a drug and alcohol problem and going directly into rehab and saying that he apologizing, saying this wasn't really him, this was the demon drink or whatever, drug or whatever, and trying to salvage himself in that way, and then emerging as a spokesperson for rehabilitation and the possibilities of that.
Janice, don't tell him.
So he's a drunk and a wife beater.
Yeah.
Well, certainly there is, there's video you can find on the internet of him falling down drunk, literally on the streets of Sydney. Yeah.
So apparently he took a break from his job some time ago for mental health reasons, whatever that is.
Yeah. So, yeah. So, and it seems like, I mean, there are so many cases like this of men who have been extremely vocal and aggressive in their feminism, in their denial that men's issues advocates have really any case to be made. And so often then they do end up being the ones who are involved in these kinds of incidents. And I know that some good people on our side would say that actually this is the case, that most male feminists are male feminists either because they genuinely recognize themselves in the feminist description of male violence, or because, even worse, because they use it as a cover for their own abusive tendencies. Right, and they hope that will be a way that they can carry on with somehow not being detected or not being denounced. Now, it's just a theory. It's an interesting theory.
It is interesting.
I don't really hold with it. I think men become feminists for a whole variety of reasons. Those might be part of it. But, I think a lot of men are just genuinely, they want a way out of being called toxic, or they're genuinely convinced that they are toxic and that this is the only way to prove that they aren't. So I don't know, but certainly it does raise that speculation about what we're to make of his very aggressive feminism.
Who was that? And I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. I'll probably remember it after this discussion is over. It was a rather famous male feminist that was
Hugo
Schweitzer.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That's who I was thinking of as Janice was talking.
Yeah, he was caught sending dick pics on his phone and admitted finally that the only reason, after years of activism, that the only reason he did it was to get laid.
And he was an instructor in women's studies.
Yes.
I mean, come on.
Where's your typical, hey, listen, there is your typical male feminist, in my opinion. Maybe not as overt as Schweitzer was about his stuff, but guys that are still, they may not be seeking to get laid, but they're seeking approval and attention and high regard from women. So they gush sympathetic about women's issues all the time, and of course confront men and try to beat men back who disagree with them. But yeah, that's the typical pattern. And what's interesting, As we found in Schweitzer's case, if you scratch a male feminist underneath, you'll find a misogynist every goddamn time.
Huh. Huh. Yeah. Crazy, crazy.
And some of them end up beating their wives.
No.
Yes.
Like OKeefe.
Or maybe it was
Yeah.
just a lead. I don't know. Who cares?
Well, I think the one thing we can say for sure is that this is unlikely to convert him to the cause of men's rights. Unfortunately.
No, I already saw some comments out there saying, well, maybe this will give him some empathy. No, it won't, guys.
No,
Don't think
I
that
doubt
for a
it.
minute.
There's always hope.
Absolutely not. This guy will see his reputation get totally thrown against the rocks. He will suffer social rejection. He'll have to go off and enjoy his money and his drinking on his own.
Yeah.
But will he suddenly find religion in the midst of all this? Absolutely not. He's hopeless.
Yeah. We will remain the enemy.
Yeah, probably.
As we
Well,
always
it's
have been.
Yep.
it's a sad story, but I guess that's it. We'll leave it there.
Is that it?
I think so.
Well, what can
Yeah.
I say? Andrew O'Keefe, may you rest in peace, you son of a bitch.
Yeah. We won't have Andrew to kick around anymore.
Well, we'll have the story, I suppose, to follow. His trial, I think, is coming
It
up
will be interesting.
later in the month. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he says and what the outcome is.
And I think that was the end of O'Keefe.
Yeah, I think
That's
so.
Well, it may be a new beginning because if he's convicted and if Australian law follows through, he may end up in a cell with a guy named Bubba.
Oh,
Who's
God.
saying something like, you're my puppy now.
Let's just hope Janice is wrong about her prediction. Jeez. That would be sad indeed. Are we finished?
We are as finished as Andrew O'Keefe, if I can coin a new term.
Indeed, indeed. So men
Are frozen.
No, women are frozen. Janice,
Apparently, women
are
are
you? We need you. Oh, she's gonna come back.
Bye-bye, guys.
Yeah, not quite yet. Not quite yet. You're back.
I'm back.
You
you
missed
see
what we
me?
said.
Yeah, unfortunately, I did. I had to hang up and
I
log
said
back in.
men. Paul said
And I
are,
said
and then you
are.
were frozen. So finish it for us.
Men are good.
All right. I feel better all over. You all take care. We'll see you.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.